We'll see how far we get today. It's B'dikas Chametz night, so not everyone is up to studying. Let's bring up the text. Okay, we're holding on page. So we're holding on page. I think it's 6A towards the bottom. Gemara. We said this piece of Gemara, but we're going to say it. We're going to start from here. Amar Rabba Bo says as follows. The Ekron Te'akar, it says about Ekron, and we're quoting verses again from different sources in Tanach, in the Chumash, in the Bible, that are referring to cities, and we're trying to figure out where these cities are vis-a-vis our current map, and what we can understand about them, and what's the reasoning behind the verses and statements that are said about them. So it says Ekron be uprooted. So where is Ekron? What is Ekron? So again, the thing is like this, that we have what's known as the biblical map and biblical characters of our story, which we have the Jewish people, Bnei Israel, we have Esav, Amalek, we have the Pelishtim, we have Aram. There's all these countries that we know, but they kind of they evolve into other countries and other places. So when we talk about Esav, which is the son of Yitzchak, Yaakov's brother, that we know today, we Edom was known as Rome, but Rome is not only Esav. Obviously, Esav had other children, but there's Esav how it evolves into Rome, but it makes its way there. It doesn't go older. It wasn't like Esav had a son that moved to Rome. It's an idea. Obviously, descendants as well. We have to believe it's also descendants, but it's a process, and the Gemara tries to help us a little bit understand this process. So Amar Rabba says, "Ve'ekron te'akar, Ekron be uprooted." This is referring to Kesari bas Edom, which is, if you literally translate, is Kesaria, daughter of Edom. And again, if you would look at the map today, you would think we're talking about, possibly we are talking about Kesaria, which is the city that was built by Herod for the kings of Rome, because Rome was already, Israel was a state part of, after the Romans came in the times of the Chashmonaim and kind of made Herod the ruler. He was a state under Rome in some sort, and then only later did the Romans come in and destroy it and destroy Israel and destroy the whole Judea, Yehuda, as it is known, Judah fell. So Caesarea was built by Herod as a city for the Roman emperors. Sheyesheves bein hacholos, it's sitting between the sands. Now, anyone who goes to Caesarea today, the beautiful beaches of Caesarea, the big sand hills by the beach, the old Roman walls that are still there as part of it. And so bein hacholos literally would mean like an island. It's not an island to say, but it is a sandy area. So it was like a sandy cutoff place where, like a national park, where to get there you had to go through these sand hills. But there's no real, maybe at one point it was an island, but it's not an island today. Ben Achayla sits by the sand. It was like a yaset is a peg that is takua, that is wedged into the Jewish people in the days of the Greeks. Again, Herod was after the Greeks. Herod was the time of Rome, but it evolved. So in the days of the Greeks, the Jews had different people that were their lords, so to say. From when Alexander the Great came and conquered that part of the world, he also came into Eretz Yisrael. He didn't destroy the temple, but the Greeks were there. That's the story of Hanukkah. So in the story of Hanukkah, it was the city of Caesarea was a thorn to the Jewish people. And again, like we all know, the story of Hanukkah was not something that happened overnight. We say 8 days, oil. That's of course the miracle. That's no one saying, making light of the fighting on the 20 that finished on the 25th. But that was just the initial fighting to give them initial footing of freedom. After that, it was a process that went on for various kings of the house of Chashmonaim, which is a discussion on its own, until they totally eradicated the Greeks from Eretz Yisrael. But Yehuda Maccabee himself, who was the star of the story of Hanukkah, was killed in one of the battles with the Greeks. So this was a wedge that was bothering the Jewish people in the days of the Greeks. And when the house of the Chashmonaim, meaning the house of the kings of Chashmonaim, the Maccabees, and they finally, over the process, were successful to be victorious over the Greeks, and it was a process of various wars. Then they called it the capture tower of Shir. So they changed the name. So the Rashi says like this, that it's Yaset Tekua Lera. When he says it was a wedge, it was a peg wedged, not for good, because a peg could be wedged in for stability, right? You put in a peg, like there was the pegs of the tabernacle. Here, the Rashi is saying it's a peg that's wedged in for negativity. And they called it Achildas Migdal Shir, Kavusha Migdal Shir. They captured the Tower of Shir, which was the name they gave for the Chashmonaim gave for the city. Like he quotes a video, Josephine says, of course, that the name Caesarea was based on the Caesars, but that was later. That was once Rome came to form. The Marsha, actually, which is one of the main commentaries on the Talmud, especially when we come to Agadic stories or parts of the Talmud, he says that what does it mean that it sits by the sand? Seeming like some sort of kind of, I don't know if it's an island, but like a place that's kind of cut off. It's in the sea. It's on like a sand hill in the sea, and on that sand hill he built Caesarea, which means Shechol Shasvas Yam Savivla. Again, till today, Caesarea is a beautiful area, like almost a park, and it has all this sand, and so therefore it was it was this place that was an oasis for the kings for the Caesars of Rome. Okay, the Rabbi Steinsaltz says as follows. The city Caesarea is established around the beginning of the Second Temple period by King Sidon Staton, who named it for himself. So, again, when I'm saying we're going to see like one of the places that is known as what is Rome. When we talk about Rome in the Bible, we don't have Rome. Rome comes to form much later. It talks about Sur. Sur is like the country Tyre. Now, Tyre today is in Lebanon. It's not anywhere near Rome. Here's Sidon. Sidon is way north along the beaches of Lebanon. So here you're talking about Sidon's over here, and Nahariya, this is the border. The black line is the border with Lebanon. So Sidon, the king of Sidon, went all the way down, and Caesarea is all the way. Caesarea would be it's all the way over here. So this is pretty far. If we're talking about the same Caesarea, Caesarea is over here, and that is the Roman Caesarea. What we have today, we have agricultural proof that was the Roman Caesarea. So you have Caesarea that's all the way south of Haifa, quite a bit, and it's about Caesarea is about an hour's north of Tel Aviv. Here's Tyre, which is Sur, which we're going to talk about soon, and Sidon's all the way on top. So where was it before Tripoli? Was it before Tripoli? So it's Sidon is either way, it's right here. So that's still very north. So Reb Steinsaltz says like this, that it was the city of Caesarea was built all the way south from Sidon. How he got so far south is another question. Who named it for himself? Saturn Tower. In Jewish sources, it is referred to as the Tower of Sharshon or the Tower of Shir. Throughout the generations, its importance decreased. And Alexander Yonas, which was known as Yanai HaMelech, which was pretty much the final powerful king of the house of Chashmonaim. After Yanai HaMelech, he dies. His wife becomes queen, Shlomotzina Malka, and she's the sister of Shimon ben Shetach. She's amazing, religious, kept the Torah. Her brother was the Nasi, was the head of the Jewish people. In her times, the Talmud tells us, in the times of Alexander Yonas' wife, Yanai HaMelech's wife, Shlomotzina Malka, everything was beautiful in Eretz Yisrael. Afterwards, when she dies, her two sons start fighting, and that's how Rome gets involved, and basically the fall of the house of Chashmonaim. Herod takes over for about 100 years, his family, and then the destruction of the temple. So Alexander Yonas, his last powerful king, he conquers it and annexes it to the land of Yehuda. Again, it was part of Eretz Yisrael original, but not part of Judah. You have to remember, when the Jewish people came back in the Second Temple, they only went into the Jerusalem area. There was the whole north. That took a long time for that to become populated by Jews. He goes up north, not totally north, because I said Caesarea is still south of Haifa, but it's north of Tel Aviv and Netanya, and he conquers it and makes it part of Judah. In honor of his victory, a holiday is recorded in the Megillah Steinsaltz, which we talked about. From the outset, Caesarea was a very strong Gentile adulterous character, which remained even after King Herod rebuilt and improved the city. That's when it becomes named Caesarea. When the Roman governors started to rule over the land of Israel in 6 CE, they turned Caesarea into their administrative center, and the city rapidly developed. The rivalry and animosity that existed between Jerusalem as the symbol of the Jewish independence and the role of Caesarea as the center of the Gentile government are apparent in the words of the sages here. So we're going to talk about Caesarea, which is represented by Rome, and Rome is Tsur. Although Tsur, again, is on the map, literally Tyre is on the beaches of Lebanon, but Tsur is considered Egypt, is considered Esav, and Rome is kind of an extension of Tsur. So when you talk about Tsur in the Tanach, the prophecies of Tsur, which could be talking about all of Rome and all of Western civilization, Tsur is actually its location. Tyre is on the north of Eretz Yisrael on the beaches of Lebanon. Are apparent in the words of the sages here. With the destruction of the temple of Jerusalem, Caesarea became even more prominent and served as the capital of the land until the Muslim conquest. The city continued to be an important city, rich city, until its destruction in the 13th century. I'm not sure what that was about, possibly when the Muslims retook Eretz Yisrael from the Crusaders, that they had a kingdom, and at that point they destroyed this stronghold, which was a Christian stronghold. I believe that's what he's referring to. Okay. Rabbi Yossi says like this. Rabbi Yossi the son of Chanina, says as follows. That I will take away his blood out of his mouth, and the detestable things from between his teeth. This is a prophecy in Zechariah. And he also shall remain for our God. What does this verse mean? So he says like this. The Rabbi Yossi explains that this is referring to their altars, which is a house of idol worship that was called Beis B'Maya because it primarily had altars. Vishikutzav Beishinav means this is the Beis Galoya Shalahan. This is the house of piles where they heap the ritual stones. So different places of idol worship. That Zechariah says, I'm going to take away from them their houses of worship. What is this talking about? And what prophecy is Zechariah talking about? Tsur again. Tsur is Tyre. Again, this is what we're starting to see again. Tsur represents the nations, and that represents Esav, that from this is the source where Roman or Esav's Edom civilization comes from. So he says, okay, now listen again. There's literally technical, and then there's how it evolves. Technical Edom. I once had actually about a year ago a friend of mine from Jordan, an Arab fellow who I know for many years. He says, I have a major dispute. You have to help settle with my friends here in Jordan. He says, we're discussing where is Edom, biblical Edom, because maybe they were concerned that Edom kind of goes into Jordan today. So we were going through the maps to see where the biblical Edom was. Biblical Edom is south of Eretz Yisrael, which would be kind of towards what would be known today as the Arava, which is the South Desert, north of Eilat, maybe going into Edom a bit, which would be east, but it's definitely southeast of, let's say, Beersheba. Edom, that's where Edom is. Edom is the land of Esav. Esav who Edom. Now, Edom and Tsur and Tyre are two opposite places. Edom is in the bottom. Tsur, Tyre is in the top. Is by Lebanon, like I said. So location-wise, it's not exactly the same. But he says Tsur is the head of Edom. Again, Esav evolves. He definitely evolves because we're going to see that most of Europe is Esav. Germany is Esav. Rome is Esav. So these are all the descendants of Esav. And kind of Tsur represents Esav, although Edom was conquered by the Chashmonaim. At the end, Shimon the Chashmonai, which was before Yanai HaMelech, he conquers Edom and he converts them. That's how Herod becomes king, because he was a convert. It's a whole story on its own. Gali b'maya Rasha avodah zarahim le'Edom. So these avodah zaras of the heaps and the altars were the avodah zara, the idol worship of Edom. Again, Edom is Esav, and Esav kind of evolves his location. Today, you would call Esav the Western civilization, Rome, Christian society, etc. But in location-wise, it evolves. It makes its way in the time of the Second Temple, in time of the Common Era, is in Rome. Okay, and the places stay for God, even though they get rid of the houses of worship of of Edom, of idol, nevertheless it stays a place for God. What does it mean that the houses of worship will be taken away from them? These are the synagogues and the yeshivas in Edom, in Rome. Again, the Gullus that we're in, the exile that we're in, is the exile of Rome, which is known as Edom, Gullus Edom. And these houses of now shuls, of synagogues and Beit Midrashim. So the prophet says they will be like a chief. Aluf is a chief in Judah. Sorry, I have to turn off my phone here. I know it's going off. A chief in Judah and Ekron as the Yevusi. Yevusi is Yerushalayim. Is a reference to Yerushalayim. Elud, and it says, what are these? Elud tereatrayos vikir kosais shebe'edom shasidim sar Yehuda lelamid behem tarabramim. When the pasuk says that v'hayuka aluf Yehuda ve'ekron kivusi, what does it mean that it shall be a chief for aluf for Judah and Ekron will be to Judah and Ekron as to Yerushalayim? These are the theaters and circuses of Edom that are going to be places that are going to be studied Torah in public. Not just a small point. If anyone remembers that the Siyum Hashas, when they do Daf Yomi, the Siyum Hashas, Siyum Hashas was done in MetLife Stadium. I think what is that? The Mets or the Jets in New York. So in New York City, which is New York City is also what we call Rome. This is the Rome of today. These are the rest of civilization. So in the stadium, in Ariel would know, MetLife Stadium, Ariel, MetLife Stadium. Who plays in MetLife Stadium?
The Jets, the Giants, and I have Jets season tickets for New York Jets, the Jets, the Giants, and I think no, not the Mets. The Mets play in like Citi Field in Queens. MetLife Stadium is in New Jersey.
I think the Daf Yomi Siyum of Daf Yomi last time was in MetLife Stadium.
Yes. I definitely believe it was. And also the World Cup is going to be played in MetLife Stadium, including the championship game.
There you go. These are the theaters of Edom and was turned for places of study. They did the Siyum Hashas in the stadium. So it happened already, this prophecy.
Yes.
So what is Kivusi? Thank you, Ariel. So Kivusi is Yerushalayim. So Rashi says, V'haya Edom alufa Yehuda, the Ekron Tia based Talmud Yerushalayim, like there's going to be houses of study in places of study in Jerusalem. So Rashi says, V'haya Edom alufa Yehuda means Edom will be for chiefs of Yehuda, and Ekron will be for places of study in Jerusalem. Okay, this Tosfos is out of place. There's a lot of discussion about this. For some reason, the Reb Steinsaltz forgot the Tosfos over here, but he says the Tosfos brings down that these places are the theaters and the circuses. It's not talking about houses of worship. It's talking about gathering of places like the stadiums are. Others say that they're also houses of Avodah Zarah, and therefore the question is, why would they learn Torah? So there's a discussion in the law if you're allowed to turn a church or a house of worship, and not even a church or a house of Avodah Zarah, into a place into a shul. He says that also the idea of aluf means alufcha means to study Torah, alufcha chachma. So aluf means like a chief of wisdom. So therefore it says Yehuda aluf Yehuda. This is going to be a place of studying of Torah. So I want to bring a nice medrash. He says, the Ksav Sofer, the son of the Chassam Sofer, writes in the Chumash, he says, Kulam lo lanu lavi makim luma Torah brabim ajistar chlim dafgu bebatim elu. The Ksav Sofer asks, I remember the Ksav Sofer. At the time of the Ksav Sofer, the son of the Chassam Sofer, which is maybe the early 1800s, the thought that they're going to do a Siyum Hashas one day at MetLife Stadium was like, whoa, tell a Jew in Europe, in the shtetl, in 200 years ago, 100 years ago, that one day they're going to be making a Siyum Hashas in MetLife Stadium in New Jersey with 60,000 people celebrating and dancing Siyum Hashas, that we think you're crazy. But that's how things happen, right? The prophet sees things how it's going to be. So Tama Ksav Sofer, the Ksav Sofer asks, Kulam lo la'asad lavi makim limud Torah b'rabim achin starch limud dafkiv batim elu. We're not going to have any other place to study Torah? That we have to go to these places to study Torah? And he quotes the Avodah Zarah, the Chazal that says in Avodah Zarah, the Talmud says like this: "The Osir Hakadosh Baruch Hu lilmud loimer l'malchi u'mas olam." When Mashiach comes, God is going to speak. There's going to be the day of accounting. The Gemara in Avodah Zarah starts with the first chapter starts with the days of Mashiach, when God is going to call in all the nations. Everyone's going to have to answer. That's why God is the new anti-Semites that are coming to form in the past year, 6 months, on all the podcasts, not to mention their names in plural, that they're making God's job easy. Mashiach is coming. So instead of having to pick out a fellow or a woman and start arguing, I am an anti-Semite, they're clear. There's plenty of documentation. You go on YouTube and podcasts, and God doesn't have to show much to prove the anti-Semites, and they'll all be judged. It's the day of judgment. That's the Gemara. So the Gemara says that when the day of judgment comes, God's going to ask the kings of the nations, what did you do with your time? Guys, you had a whole world for 3,000 years. You guys destroyed the temple. What did you spend your time doing in those 2,000 years? We made a lot of places. We built. Look at the Twin Towers. Look at the Statue of Liberty. Look at MetLife Stadium. Look what we've done. Everything we did was for the Jewish people. That's what they're going to say when the day of judgment, because the truth is going to be shown. They're going to try to get out of it. Why do we build these big stadiums and these big places? So these big convention centers, you can have a Knesset Shluchim, right? So you can have 5,000, 6,000 Shluchim dancing. Otherwise, why would we need to have a great convention center that size? The nations are going to say everything was built for the Jewish people. We built it so they should be able to have comfort to be able to study Torah. So the Gemara says that if that was their true intentions, then they would receive reward for that. Of course, God would say, absolutely. No, that's amazing. That's something that's a worthwhile endeavor. And God knows all thoughts. You can't lie to God. The Gemara says is going to answer, don't try to tell me you did it for the Jewish people. You did it for yourself. And that's why the Torah is going to be studied specifically in public places like the theaters and the stadiums. The same places that were used for wastefulness and for laughter and for maybe inappropriate behavior is going to turn places of learning Torah. And actually, there's going to be a silver lining that why are we learning in these places that were used for laughter and just and joy and not for substance, is actually to tell the students, look, if the nations are able to use these places 24/7 for wasteful time, use it for 24/7 of studying of Torah. Okay, this is a ksav sofer. I don't want to get into the language of it and the tone of it, etc. But the point is that when Mashiach comes, there's going to be a day of judgment, and every single endeavor is going to have to be answered for. And Baruch Hashem, I'm not saying that the intentions are bad. That Baruch Hashem, the fact that we can do a Sima Shas in MetLife Stadium is a huge thing. It's a Dira B'Tachtonim. Again, 200 years ago, I asked someone that there's going to be a Sima Shas, 60,000 people celebrating the completion of the Talmud. It's in MetLife Stadium, we think you're crazy. And then we have the other places, etc. So Ka'aluf Yehuda, the Reb Steinsaltz says, there's a double interpretation of the word aluf. In the simple meaning of the verse, it refers to the chiefs of Judah will be in the theaters, while in the same time there's a play on the Aramaic root, ya'aluf, meaning to teach. It'll be a place of studying of Torah. Okay, he goes into the play. This is the theaters, and he says this is the circuses. These shows the Greek sources of this. Okay, Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak says, another place that's mentioned, Leshem. What is Leshem? Where's Leshem? Zupam Yos Ekroin Teoker Zekesari Bas Yehuda. So Leshem is Pamios. Pamios is the Banyos. Again, the Banyos is the water source for the Jordan River. For the river, the Jordan River kind of starts from Banyos, which is the north. There's a whole one in the some sort of peace talks that they tried with Lebanon over the years. The discussion was the sources of the Jordan River that feeds into the Kinneret and then continues out south of the Kinneret down towards the Dead Sea, Yam HaMelech. So that's the Jordan River. So the source that feeds into the Kinneret is the Banyos. Today you could go to the Banyos. It's up north, between under the Golan, on the north of Israel. It's a beautiful fall, nothing compared to what we're used to maybe in Seattle. If you go to Snoqualmie Falls, but it's a big fall. That's one of the water sources of the Jordan River. So it says Leshem is Pamios, Ekron Teakar. When it says Ekron, be uprooted is Kesari Bas Edom. It's talking about Kesaria. It was the metropolitan place of the kings seemingly of Rome. Why was it the metropolitan of the kings? Some people say the Marbi Malachi. Some people say that they raised the kings there. It means kings were raised there. That they appointed from their kings. Not they raised them or they're appointed. Is it a location for appointing or the location of actually where they raised the kings? Obviously, one has to look into what's the significance of the difference. Again, this is Caesarea seeming. Again, is it the point of the point is when we say Caesarea Bas Edom, are we coming to say that this is the Caesarea Bas Edom, but it kind of expands all the way into the sea, into the areas of Edom, which seems to be Tyre up in the north, and then into places of Europe. But are we talking about that specific place, Caesarea? Did they specifically raise the kings, the Caesars there? Or are we talking about the governors of Eretz Yisrael? Are we talking about specifically that they anointed Caesar there? I mean, Caesar is anointed in Rome. So it's kind of an idea. Rashi says, Ekron will be a study place for in Jerusalem. We'll see how that works together. We said Ekron is Caesarea. Leshem is a place that was conquered by the children of Dan, which is north again, north of the Sea of Galilee, of the Kinneret. And where's that place? Is the Paimus. The Gemara tells us that the Yard in the Jordan River, one of its sources is the Banyas River. There seems to be some sort of source, the depth of the Banyas River or Banyas Falls is some sort of inner waters of some cave. What does it mean, a metropolitan? So Rashi says, Lashon Yavin, it's a Greek word, which means Ema. Ema is metra, matronusa. Shamachus, matra. And Polin is Sharara, royalty. So the mother of royalty. Mar Achabai Dailufa Bir Shnei Sarim, like we see the word Yolfi, Polin is royalty, is ministers. So Matra Pola means the mother of Malchus, of kingship, of kingdom. So that's maybe the purpose. The reason when we say a city is a metropolitan is because it's a big city. It's a place where it's a large city where most of the people of the country live. They raised the children of kings. Rashi Reb Steinsaltz says the literal translation of the word is mother city, meaning the main city of the capital. Let's put it simply. Here he tells us a bit because we're going to start learning a bit about Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak is going to be telling us different things. So it says like this: there is two Amoraim, there are two Talmudic sages. Again, the Talmud was written in two places. There's the Jerusalem Talmud and the Babylonian Talmud. So the Babylonian Talmud is what we're studying. The tractate. So the information we're getting is as if, you may have to close your eyes for a second, you're sitting in the yeshivas in Bavel. Bavel is not in Eretz Yisrael. Bavel is what's today Iraq, Iran, right? So they're sitting in these yeshivas talking about Eretz Yisrael, talking about the places. So when they're describing verses and places, they're not sitting there, they don't have Google Maps. And not just that, there's traditions. We're not just studying about pointing our finger and saying, this is Tyre, this is Tsur, this is Caesarea, this is Leshem. There's ideas behind these names, and there's stories behind these names, and there's history behind these names. And there's ideas that aren't just stories that are, okay, this is the story of this place, but these stories affect who we are. So the stories, like, if you want to know your story, you have to know the stories of these locations, of these places. So who are the sources of these ideas, of this Agada? It says Rabbi Yitzchak keeps on repeating it. So who is Rabbi Yitzchak? So he says there are two Amoraim by the name who lived in Eretz Yisrael. They both lived in Eretz Yisrael, means they were Talmudic scholars from the Jerusalem Talmud. At the same time, both of whom were students of Rabbi Yochanan. Like I said, Rabbi Yochanan was a young student by Rebbe. He lived very long. He's the main personality of the Jerusalem Talmud, and he actually lives in Tiberias, and he's the one who, under him, they write the Jerusalem Talmud. One of these sages was known for his erudition in Jewish law, while the other one, who is apparently the individual quoted in the Gemara, in our Gemara, focused on the Agada. Haggadah means this telling over, like the Haggadah we're going to say tonight. The Haggadah is the story. It appears that Rabbi Yitzchak spent significant time in Babylonia and brought many teachings of Eretz Yisrael. So why are we quoting him here in the Babylonian Talmud? Because he came over. He went to Eretz Yisrael. He went from Eretz Yisrael to Babel for a period of time, and he taught over there. And in teaching over there, he gave over traditions about places and stories and history and how we can understand these stories and these prophecies that are mentioned and putting it together, putting the pieces of the puzzle together to understand what the prophets are saying and what the times mean and how this affects who we are, right? To the diaspora community and particularly the teachings of Rabbi Yochanan. His academic interpretations appear throughout the Babylonian Talmud, and several Babylonian sages cite teachings in his name. So the Rabbi Yitzchak that we talk about, and how do we know, what's just a hint, how do we know that he's from Israel, not from himself, a member of the Babylonian Talmud, is the fact that his name is Rabbi Yitzchak, which is in that times, meaning the times after the Mishnah was, the scholars in Babylonia were not called Rebbe. They had other names. They would say Rav. But when you said Rebbe, Rav Yitzchak, so if you see Rav Yitzchak or Rav Yehuda, you know that they don't live in Eretz Yisrael. But if it says Rebbe, then you know they live in Eretz Yisrael, even though they lived in a later time, in the time of the Talmud, not the time of the Mishnah. Okay. So what does he say? So he says as follows. He says, continue. Rabbi Yitzchak says, Kisari Yerushalayim. When you look at Kisaria and Yerushalayim, okay, now when we say Kisaria and Yerushalayim, we mean Kisaria and everything that it represents. Rome. In this time, and meaning Tzur. So we're going to connect Kisaria, which is again south of Haifa, with Tzur, which is north in Lebanon, both along the beach. This is Edom. This is Rome. This is Esav. This is Germany. These are countries that are connected all to the descendants of Esav. So Kisar and Yerushalayim, if you have these two places, so how do you view them both? This is really, where does this all start? This all starts in Rivka's stomach, right? Rivka has a rumbling stomach while she's pregnant, and she doesn't know what's going on over here. This child wants to go to the idol worship. When I go by yeshiva, he wants to come out. This is a confused child. She goes to her grandfather Shem, the son of Noach, and he says, Shnei goyim bevitnech. You have two children. You're holding twins, and they're going to always fight. They're never going to get along, and they're going to have different ideas. And that's the situation. And she accepts that, like we've learned, that she accepts it. She knows this is, she has clarity. She's not happy. She's not excited, ecstatic that her children are going to be fighting and one's going to be going to the Avodah Zarah, but at least she has clarity of what's going on. So when you say Kasari and Yerushalayim, we're talking about these two children that are in Rivka's stomach. So if someone's going to tell you, both are destroyed, Jerusalem is destroyed, and Rome is destroyed, and Caesarea is destroyed, Al Tamin, don't believe them. Yashvu Shteim, if someone's going to tell you both stand strong, right? This is why are people going so crazy today? How could Israel be fighting hand in hand with the United States, with the superpower of the West? You can't be Yashvu Shteim. You can't have two strong, you can't have Yaakov and Esav strong together. Al Tamin, don't believe them. Don't believe that both of them could be strong. Chorve Kisar of Yashvu Yishlayim, if someone tells you that Kisaria was destroyed and Jerusalem is standing strong, or Chorve Yishlayim v'Yashvu Kisari, or Jerusalem is destroyed and Kisaria is standing strong, Tamin, then you can understand. It's either or. It's not both. How do we know? What's the proof? He quotes a verse. The verse says, Imali Charva, and this is talking about Tzur. Again, Tzur is Tyre, but again, it's all representing the concept of Edom. Im leyazu charvazu. The word says imal'a. The word mala means to fill up. The charva means the destruction. So there's the so to say like the rebuilding of the destruction. Im leyazu. If one is filled up, charvazu, the other one's destroyed. Im leyazu charvazu, and if the other one is filled up, the other one is destroyed. They can't both be standing. They can't both be destroyed. It's either Tzur, Caesarea, or Jerusalem. If Jerusalem is standing, Caesarea is down. If Caesarea is standing, Jerusalem is down. This is the Rabbi Yitzchak has the tradition. And based on the verse in Yecheskel, it says, Ilmale, he said, Rabbi Steinsaltz says, because Tyre, let's see the English of it. If Avi says that Caesarea is destroyed, Caesarea says like over here. The sages, let's read the English. The sages said that the fortunes of Caesarea, which represents Rome and the Jerusalem, are demiatic opposites. If therefore someone says that because Tyre has said against Jerusalem, this is the verse, The gates of the people have been broken. She is turned to me, I shall be filled with her that is laid to waste. That's the verse in Yechezkel. So Tyre, which is like Caesarea, represents Rome. Consequently, the verse indicates that if the city is filled, that one is laid to waste. So the city of Tyre, Rome, Caesarea is standing, then Jerusalem is to waste. If Jerusalem is standing, the Tyre, Caesarea, Rome is wasted. It says, this is the verse. The beginning of the verse, Yan Amrit Sur al Yushlaim. Sur says on Jerusalem. Again, Sur represents Rome. That Akshav Ismale Mechurvasai, that it will fill up from its waist. So if Sur is standing strong, Jerusalem is destroyed. And that's the verse that we have to prove that they can't both be standing, they can't both be destroyed. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak Omer, again, I try to check, I have to go deeper into this, because you can't just put words together. We have to understand really the connection between all these places. Why is Sur Edom? And I mean, literally, Edom, where Esav was south. Sur is north by Lebanon. I guess at some point, and then you have Torah makes its way connects to Caesarea, and that whole area connects to Rome, etc., and other places under Western civilization, under the descendants of Esav. So how it all exactly maps out, just technically, is not so simple. But Sur again represents Esav. Rav Nachman Yitzchak says, no, there's another verse. This is the verse that I quoted before about Rivka. And the one people shall be stronger than the other people. Either or. They can't both be. This is Genesis. This is Rivka's prophecy from her grandfather Shem. And therefore, if Israel if Yaakov is standing, which is Jerusalem, then Sur, which is Esav, is destroyed. If Esav is standing, which is Sur, Caesarea, then the Jerusalem is not standing. He quotes over here. Also, there's a lot of ideas. It's quoted to Tanya. Tanya quotes that this is not just representing two nations and two peoples. It's also talking about the Yetzer Hara and Yetzer Tov, the good inclination, the evil inclination, and the evil inclination and the good inclination. The Yetzer Tov, which is representing the nefesh, the elikis, the godly part, and then you have the animal side inside you. So that struggle also is always, you can't both be standing. You can't have a Yetzer Hara standing powerful and your Yetzer Tov standing powerful, and you can't have them both destroyed. If your Yetzer Hara is on top, then your Yetzer Tov is down. If your Yetzer Tov is on top, your Yetzer Hara is down. You can't both be standing. If a person comes to you and says, I'm both, don't believe that person. What does it mean, don't believe that person? Look, examine which one's really standing, because both can't be standing. A person can't say, I could balance my nefesh alikis, my godly soul, and my nefesh bahamas, my animal soul. It doesn't work like that. And that's one of the foundations of the Tanya. What does this mean when it says, we'll do one more piece and then we'll stop? Yuchen Rasha Baal Lomed Tzedek. That it says, let favor, Yuchan from the word chen, be shown to the wicked, yet will he not learn righteousness. This is a verse in Yeshaya. So Omer Rabbi Yitzchak Lefnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm sorry, Omer Yitzchak Lefnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Our father Yitzchak, Rivka's husband, son of Avram, tells God, Rebbeinu Shalom, Master of the universe, Yuchan Esav, give grace to Esav. God, Yitzchak and Esav are very close. Amr Lai Rashahu, God tells him he's wicked, he's evil. Amr Lai, he says, Baal Lamed Tzedek, and no one finds righteousness, teach him righteousness, teach him to change. Amr Lai, God says, Be'eretz Nechoichis Ya'avel. So God says to him, yet will the land of the uprighteousness, he will deal wrongly. He will destroy Yerushalayim. Amalayim Keni, Yitzchak said, if that's the case, Bal Yirageus Hashem, then he shouldn't behold the majesty of the Lord. Sorry, Yitzchak tried, and when he's told that Esav is going to destroy Jerusalem, so don't. So God says, Yitzchak says, then you can't show him chen, you can't show him graciousness. Rasha zu Esav. Who's the Rasha? This is Esav. He's going to destroy Jerusalem. Yitzchak Kadosh Baruch Hu, God, Yitzchak tells God, Yuchan Rasha zeh Esav. Kadosh Baruch Hu Rashahu. Give chen, give grace to Esav. Can we do anything about Esav? God says he's wicked. Yitzchak says, Lamed Tzedek. Claimer, Ein Adim Yochel Limud Alav Tzedek. Is no one able to find virtue in Yitzchak, in Esav? Kadosh Baruch Hu, what do you want? He's going to destroy Jerusalem. I kind of think this is a printing mistake. Amr Yitzchak, he says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yuchen Rasha Za'esav Am HaKadosh Baruch Hu Rashu Bezachach Chisiyav Klemer Asad Lach Vezer Yisrael. He's going to destroy the whole of Israel. Yitzchak Imkein Bal Yirageus, he shouldn't see the majesty of Hashem. It's not gonna happen. So let's see what Reb Steinsaltz says. I think we're going to stop here after this. So Baal Lamed Tzedek, some interpret this phrase as a statement, not a question. Actually, we'll finish the piece, so we'll go a little further. Some interpret this phrase as a statement, not a question, and explain it as follows. For Esav did not learn righteousness. In other words, Esav did not study Torah. Therefore, perhaps his evil actions were unintentional. Means Yitzchak is saying, Bad Lamed Tzedek is not asking, could someone find righteousness? He's trying to excuse Esav's behavior. He says, what do you want from Esav? He doesn't know the law. He didn't study. And he should be forgiven. In the Medrash, this question is explained differently. Did he not learn righteousness as a question? He would certainly diligently observe the commandments of honoring one's fathers. And I think we know that he had a tremendous kibbutz. He was very, very, Esav really respected his father, Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak says, what does it mean? What does the verse in Tehillim mean? Grant not, O Lord, the desires of the wicked, further not his evil device, so they do not exalt themselves. What does this mean? Yaakov says to God, the Master of the universe, but don't give Esav what he wants, his heart's desires. What does it mean to not take out the zamamai? Means the muzzle. Don't remove. They had a ring, like a nose ring, to hold hold the animal. Hold Esav tight. Don't take out from his nostrils. Zamam kimin tabas barzel. It's like a iron ring that you would put in the nostrils of the anaka. Anaka is a type of gamal, a type of camel. And to be able to pull him. Because the animal is so strong, it's so sensitive to the nose that's the only way to control him. So to Esav is very strong. Don't take out his nose ring that you're holding him in. So he says, here it says like this, Germania shel Edom. Germania shel Edom means Germany. Again, Germania shel Edom, saying Germany of Edom. Again, so Edom extends. It's not just Tyre, it's not just Caesarea, it's not just Rome, it's also Germania shel Edom is the Germany. That it says, which here he says Gemaria of Edom, in other words, Germany, which is near the land of Edom, in other words, Rome, as if the Germans would go forth, they would destroy the entire world. And this is like what Yaakov is saying, to hold the nose ring. Gamari Rashi says, Shem Machas V'im Edom. You have to remember something else. Rashi also has to write a bit coded. He lived in these countries. Rashi lived in France and Germany. You have to be careful. So Gamari shel Malchus V'im Edom. It's part of Edom. So Rabbi Steinsaltz says, in the German description, there is in the Gemara's description, there is an indication of one of the essential problems of the Roman Empire is related with the various German tribes. Right? They were finding the German tribes. The Germans were divided into a large number of tribes, and each one had its own minor king, to whom the Gemara alluded to as princes with the crowns tied to their heads. The wars with the Germans, which continued for hundreds of years, depleted the strength of the Roman Empire until eventually it was conquered by the Germans. So this inner struggle between Germany and Rome caused a focus that they shouldn't be focused on other things. This is what Yaakov was saying. Don't let them lose their focus. Let them kill each other. If they're killing each other, they won't bother us too much. It says, it says that there is 300 young princes with crowns tied to their heads in Gemaria of Edom, which is Germany. And there are 365 dukes in Romi. Every day they go and they fight against each other. One dies, and they have to appoint a new king. Basically, they're killing each other. So this is the Gemara says, Gamaya Shemachas Vihimi Edom. Again, he says this is Edom. Marzavani Duchsim, this is Dukes. So he says, Va'om Rabbi Yitzchak, it says. Right, we're going to stop over here. So basically, he goes into this, is goes to continue with the Gemara of Igati Matzasi. We'll stop over here. It's a new piece, but basically, these are the prayers, these are the stories. Again, there's a lot that's being said, and a lot in between the lines. A lot that we understand, a lot we don't understand. Just to get a clear picture of the geography of things is not clear. But the message we understand, that there's it gives us a little taste and understanding of what's going on. Just want to wish everyone a Chag Kosher V'Sameach, and may this be the year. Today is Erev Pesach, and Bizman Shebeis HaMikdash HaYikayim, when the temple was standing, we would be getting all ready now with our sheeps and our goats to go to Har HaBayis, to go to Temple Mount to sacrifice the Paschal Lamb. This was one of the greatest days of the Jewish calendar, of just the awesomeness of all the Jews going to Temple Mount to sacrifice it. The Gemara tells us the complication of it was just so amazing, and the precise precision of the operation of having all the Kohanim work in sequence in order for this to be able to be, that the Jewish people, so many people, should be able to sacrifice a Paschal Lamb. So it's amazing to know that I'm sitting right here now, not even a kilometer and a half from Har HaBayis. This is where ground zero for this operation is, and when Mashiach is going to come, and hopefully it comes still today, we're going to all be able to sacrifice the Paschal Lamb, halachically walaru, in the case where everyone's tamei, together here in Yerushalayim with the Binyan Beis HaMikdash and Temple Mount. May it be speedy in our times. Again, wish everyone a Chag Kosher V'Sameach, happy Pesach, and we'll see each other continuation in. I'll send out a note of what classes we're going to be doing next week as they go together with Yom Tov. There will be no classes till at least Saturday night. We'll try to maybe get in one more class of our halacha class with the story of the Baal Shem Tov.